and welcome to Wrestling and Everything, Coast to Coast, with your host, Buddy Sotello, Esquire, Evan Ginzburg, and Mike Lano. And we have a very special show for you fans tonight. Do you guys want to tell us what happened this week and what we'd like this show to be dedicated to?
Sure. Our dear friend Melissa Coates passed away unexpectedly during the week, and we're going to devote the entire show to honoring her memory. She was a champion bodybuilder. She made it to a WWE pay-per-view. She was an active indie wrestler and later valet for Sabu. She was an independent actress. She acted in many indie films, etc., so on. I mean, quite the resume. And Mike, why don't you tell us a little about your relationship with Melissa?
Well, and the first thing, she was one of the big stars for the first 2 seasons of Extreme Dodgeball on Game Show Network, and her team that she also coached and played on nearly won the whole thing. But I met her. Gosh, I'm trying to think. It was like 2004, 2005. It was not long after, and it was her very first West Coast tour. Very first time she came. She was originally from Canada, as you know, Ontario, Thunder Bay, where Vampiro and others came from. I think even John Morrison's wife, Taya Valkyrie, who's now Frankie in NXT. But anyway, it was her very first trip and very first visit to the West Coast Wrestling, and she had Pam, otherwise known as Bailey. That was the very first match for Bailey. And she
also known as Davina Rose.
Davina Rose, that came from both of her 2 grandmothers. That's where she came up. She told me her real name's Pam. That's where she told me she came up with those names. And she grew up in Fremont anyway. But then the follow-up card to that was on a BTW show at the Newark Pavilion, right near, a little above San Jose, California, Northern Cal. And then Melissa Coates came back, and she was a big star. And I was happy to meet her, happy to find out what a nice person, engaging, caring about others in the locker room and all of that. Super nice. Well, she returned back teaming with Amber O'Neil, who would later become Luke Gallows' wife in 2014 and go with him to New Japan and all of that stuff with that tag team. And they were in a tag match with Davina Rose, again, Bailey now in WWE. I sent a photo to her and asked, wasn't this your very first match ever in front of people? And then she had a very nice tweet and public thing that she put out about, yes, that was her very first match, and how Melissa, helped her out, and that they had this common bond, particularly when it's your very first match. And for Melissa, it was a high-profile match for her, her first time in California on the West Coast. And then I would see Melissa at a lot of shows, and of course Evan met her, and Evan will go into all the things that he was able to do, and got to spend more time with her. I would see her at a bunch of different shows, all these WrestleCons that High Spots put on when she hooked up, and maybe you can tell us a little later how she met Sabu, because that was kind of out of the blue, and most folks, I've given Buddy some of my photos, and the very last time, to my knowledge, that she managed Sabu, I sent one of those photos as Super Genie, and she had a whole line of merch as Super Genie. But, she had this huge career, Evan will go into, in bodybuilding, in acting. Her parents were healthcare professionals, her mom a nurse, her father a doctor, and she even had said she was thinking about trying MMA, and thinking about she got her BS in biology, and she got she was pre-medical in college and stuff, so she had the stats and all of that. But Ev, let me throw it to you on that. But I just wanted to say what a very nice person. We all loved her. Not everybody knows of her. You guys did get to see her, thankfully, anytime Sabu was in Impact the last few years. In that character, which was very cool, because you know what that character was, Ev and Russ? It was a tribute to Sheik's aunt, who Joyce Farhat, the Sheik's wife, played his valet Princess Salima in the late 50s, early 60s. And so now Sabu had his own person. But when he particularly had all those hip injuries and stuff, Melissa was so involved in helping throw the chairs to him and all the gimmicks and weapons that he would use. She knew in advance what he needed. And I know I sent a couple of emails to Sabu. He's hurting and a lot of pain because she lost part of her leg with the blood clots. But let me throw to Evan on that. We all were thinking about her, that GoFundMe that quickly raised a lot of money to help her with a prosthesis and with some medical costs. So thank everybody that did that. But Ev, let me throw it to you.
I'd like to read a piece. It's very short that I wrote about her. I wrote two pieces, one for Pro Wrestling Stories and one for Pro Wrestling Post. This is called My Friend Melissa Coates, and this will give you a lot of background on her as well. Melissa Coates was like a parade. Muscles rippling, long, lush, blonde, flowing locks down to the bottom of her back. The 1996 IFBB Jan Tanner Classic bodybuilding champion and former Ohio Valley wrestling trainee doesn't look like just any woman walking down the street. And I was proud to call her a friend. So on that night, on April 2nd, 2010, when at the age of 50, I finally made a leap into marriage, I had to have Melissa there. While my wedding was at City Hall, the after party was at Gizzy's, a New York City bar restaurant where I booked talent of every genre. Located at 16 West 8th in the ever so bohemian, legendary West Village, Bob Dylan, Lenny Bruce, the Beatniks et al. They all created masterpieces, and a few doors down was Hendrix's Electric Ladyland studio, where Jimmy and other musical legends created immortal art. And my artist friends, wrestlers, adult ed students of every race, creed, color, and nation had all collided to make a joyful noise and create some art themselves. So there we were. New York City swing was jamming. Ned Massey, John Hammond Sr.'s Final Discovery, was captivating us with his brilliant songwriting. One great talent after another, all deserving of wider exposure, as they say, graced the stage. We were one nation under a groove. It was the best wedding I've ever been to, more than one person told me. And then, suddenly, Melissa Coates hit the joint. While the music didn't stop, it felt like a Fellini-esque moment. It was as if the attention momentarily left the stage, and in what felt like slow motion, all heads turned towards the door as Melissa strutted in. A bundle of nervous energy, charisma, and raw power. Her Rapunzel-like locks trailed behind her, and folks stared in awe and amazement. The woman knew how to command a room. She hugged me, and I felt her strength immediately, explaining in her mile-a-minute patter some elaborate tale of woe as to why she was late. That saga's been lost to time. All that's remembered now is that amazing entrance. Shoot ahead a decade, and I'm still wrapping my head around the fact that Melissa recently had a horrific medical emergency with blood clots in her legs threatening her very life. It resulted in the amputation of her left leg. A photo of Melissa in her wheelchair post-surgery hit me hard, but I know this athlete's heart. I know the discipline that went into becoming a champion bodybuilder, to climb the ranks in pro wrestling, to be better than all the rest, and to be the one asked to be on magazine covers seen around the world. That was my friend Melissa. And tragically, after suffering with her leg the past few months, she suddenly passed away, and that's why we're here today.
Let me add something too that a lot of people don't know. Before she even thought about bodybuilding and pro wrestling or acting, she actually was a huge mark for Martina Navratilova and Chris Evert, and wanted to be a pro tennis player, growing up in Canada. So
she was multi-talented. In this picture right here, let me just quickly say, that's me and Melissa, and in black, that's Solomon Shertok, who's an indie film producer who always championed her, who saw, she had a lot of charisma and talent, and she made quite a few indie films along the way. And she climbed to the top in bodybuilding. She made it to a WWE pay-per-view. how many people, succeed to that level in two fields? It's really pretty amazing if you think about it. Most people don't climb to the top in one field. So, much respect.
She won the Canadian Junior Girls Tennis Championship, and she won her first tennis competition in 1984, which is pretty big. And then she went into bodybuilding, which usually is kind of hand in hand with, fitness modeling, which she excelled at as well. And it looks like I'm reading off IMDb here, looks like she moved to Los Angeles in 94. And her work ethic, she was working at 2 gyms and 2 bars until she was running one of the gyms all by herself to finance herself, because she came there with, she said, like $1.50 in her pocket from Canada to Los Angeles. She was granted her professional weightlifting and bodybuilding pro status in 1995. She won the Jantana Classic in 96. And then she took a leave from both bodybuilding and weightlifting to work as a model and fitness.
That's not her, buddy.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. That's our guest who wasn't able to make it.
Right. Sorry.
And then, of course, she was on Game Show Network and did a lot of PR for Extreme Dodgeball. And her training, she had some of the greatest trainers, starting at Killer Kowalski's training school. And then at Rick Bassman's Ultimate Pro, UPW was a farm system for WWF at the time. And in 2005, she was in the Women's Wrestling League, Carmen Electra Project. She then formed a friendship with April Hunter. Ev, did you know, because obviously back east with Nicole Bass and everything, did they have any kind of friendship, Melissa and Nicole, or no?
They knew each other. They were supportive of each other. I don't think they were best friends. They lived in different parts of the country, but every time I mentioned one to the other, it was always very positive. She's so nice, I like her. I mean, that's basically it in a nutshell, as far as I know.
Well, then she went down to WWE's main farm system, developmental Ohio Valley Wrestling, where Jim Cornette and quite a few other guys, when Cornette was replaced by Paul Heyman, he had a hand in helping her out. And the appearance that she made on the WWE Backlash pay-per-view was taking Chris Masters' Master Lock Challenge, a so-called fan out of the stands. And she was unable to break the Master Lock, but she lasted quite a bit longer, because normally he did that only on guys. I think she was one of the few, if not the only female to do that. In OVW, she was also a trainer, and she did the head of security gimmick for Kenny Bolin. This is a Jim Cornette protege. His whole entire stable, Bolin Services. And she worked in World Extreme Wrestling. She came out for XPW in the Los Angeles area and some of their East Coast house shows. She just, you just look up and down. Deep South Wrestling with Buddy Lee Parker and the original assassin Jody Hamilton. They helped train her. So she was just all over the place. Also, Bill DeMott helped train her when WWE Deep South kind of fizzled and their performance center happened. So, just lots of folks. But when you start with somebody that Evan and I knew very, very well for decades and decades, Killer Walter Kowalski, it doesn't get much better than that. And, it just, and she even feuded, I forget where, with Natty Neidhart. I can't recall that now. One of the all-women's promotions. I don't know if it's the Montreal one or Shimmer or Shine, but... man, and so many people are tweeting and writing about her. She said some write-ups on Fox News and some of the other ones that usually are only covering WWE, major global networks. So she deserves it, but she had just turned 50 like a week and a half ago?
Yeah, my last conversation with her online, I was wishing her a happy birthday. And this was just a couple of days ago. And I even published that transcript for Pro Wrestling Post, because in that brief discussion, it really showed the person that she was. overcoming adversity, warm, a loving daughter, a loving friend. You know, she's very vulnerable. She had a lot of that Marilyn Monroe, Judy Garland type. Here's a star who climbed to the top of an industry, bodybuilding, but vulnerable. And you could see by the response, it's an overwhelming, one person after another, how nice she was, how kind she was, how sweet she was. It's, in this business, there's a lot of pettiness and backbiting, and not everybody will get that response when they're gone. But and it's hard to even wrap my head around it because, like I said, I was just chatting with her the other day and giving her advice. I said, "You'd be a perfect motivational speaker. You've been through a lot. With her leg recently and overcoming all of it. She was back in the gym. She was training in spite of losing the leg." And it's really hard to wrap your head around it all.
A lot of big name people came out to help her, guys, when that happened at GoFundMe. It was like, I don't know, a record amount of time. People came to her aid. That route had worked for Sabu when he needed his hip surgery, and she really took good care of him. He was, done with a divorce with Mibu, who he met in FMW Japan. So, Ev, do you even know the story? How did she meet Sabu? How did they come to be a couple?
That I'm not sure. I mean, again, she lived 1,000 miles away from me, so I didn't know every minute detail of her personal life. But I'll tell you one thing. She said to me that after she lost her leg, Sabu was really there for her, really took care of her, was there for her. And, there was a real bond there. So
they were in Vegas. I would see them, the last 3 years they came to Cauliflower Alley. She had been there on her own back around 2005, 2006. So she'd been to at least 5 Vegas Cauliflower Alleys when we moved it from Los Angeles to Vegas in 2000. Tell us, too, I don't know if, because you had told me earlier, this is also the anniversary of us losing your great friend who I got the honor to meet and watch wrestle. And, I saw him on tape from Calgary and Tiger Khan. But did you ever introduce the two of them? Did they know each other?
Vaguely, everybody in wrestling knows each other. But again, Tiger was a New Yorker, and much of her life she was in Detroit and later Vegas during her career anyway.
Well, Detroit, she had to have met Sabu because he really never moved away until they moved together to Vegas because there's no state tax. And a lot of the wrestlers you'll notice are either in Florida and have been migrating to Florida, particularly during the WCW days because it was an airport hub, but there was little to no state tax, and the same with the state of Nevada. That's why so many people from Rob Van Dam and his fiance are there. A zillion guys. Greg Valentine is in Vegas, and Sabu and Melissa moved there at least 3 to 4 years ago, to my knowledge.
And Tiger died 15 years ago to the day. For those who don't know, Tiger Khan worked for the Hearts up in Calgary, wrestled all over the world. And it's ironic that history repeats itself. 15 years to the date of his death, we're doing a tribute to another late friend who, also passed. So a lot of tragedy in this business. Tiger was 33. Melissa, 50 is young by today's standards.
And last week, Evan, you had the unfortunate timing of telling me, for the first time that I'd heard it, that my friend, a personal friend of mine, Aaron Fenzi, died, and we're still not sure exactly the cause.
Yeah, for the clickbait champions, the wrestling media, instead of doing 5,000 words on a meaningless Raw or SmackDown, maybe when an indie wrestler dies, give them some ink instead. You know?
Yeah, or instead of showing us a rerun of something we just saw 5 minutes ago, you could take out 1 minute of that and give a tribute to somebody that died trying to get into the business. And if I can say just a few words about Aaron, just, you know, we did last week. Honestly, Evan, if you dropped a bowling ball on my foot, I would have been less shocked than you telling me that Aaron was dead.
Yeah, because he was a big, health-conscious guy.
Yes, and I had absolutely not even the slightest clue. One time I was on your show, remember, and I talked about Virgil Flynn, who was a guy who was in his 30s and the epitome of
What was the cause of death for Virgil? I knew Virgil, you know, from the day he started as well in front of people. What was his cause of death? Super young guy.
It was an aneurysm. It was he had a blood vessel pop inside of him, and again, just absolutely nothing. Led to a stroke that killed him instantly. It was in his brain, so there's nothing you can do. In fact, they just gave the cause of death out for the man who was the question mark in NWA. Josephus. He was also known as Josephus. And he had a heart condition, just a congenital heart valve issue that was both undetectable and untreatable. And he was another person way before his time. And, you know, what I you know, and I don't want to take any attention away from Melissa at all, because what happened to her was so tragic. But I also want people to understand, like in the case of Virgil, in the case of Josephus, in the situation with Melissa and with Aaron, that it isn't, a lot of times people are like, well, they're wrestlers, so they must have been on pills and they must have been on steroids, and therefore they brought it on themselves. Because
Aaron was a health nut.
Yeah, Aaron absolutely couldn't have been further away from any of those things. I'm sure that Melissa did a lot of her stuff without the use of any kind of enhancements. You know, you look at those photos, and I'm sure a lot of people will judge her and say, well, of course she used steroids. And as far as you are concerned, you don't know that she ever did anything along those lines.
She said in an interview, I had an interview with her, and someone else did, and it was posted. Mine was years ago, but she said she never touched that stuff, and she was, you know, into health consciousness. And
I mean, we've known a lot of people, Mike, you and I. We've known a lot of people personally, and steroids was not a part of their lives. People like Bailey, okay, never, you know,
she's alive.
Matt Heisen, you know, people like Virgil Flynn and Mark Smith. Mark Smith, a lot of people accuse Mark Smith of doing steroids, and I had a long talk with him where he absolutely said he wouldn't touch that stuff. He's been offered, you know, he was offered it many times, and in fact, maybe if he had done steroids in the earlier part of his career, he might have gotten that break in the WWE. He had the height and the size, but he was never, you know, ripped like a guy like Strowman or you know, like the Ultimate Warrior. You know, he didn't have the bulging vein.
Shitty workers that are shitty because they can't move and manipulate, and because they're on PEDs, and that's what's been great since the Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart era, is we had normal sized guys that were far more exciting. I mean, I would rather see Roderick Strong, all those guys in NXT that are so talented, and you know, the vast majority you would never say they were doing anything. And the ones that aren't users, the ones that you mentioned that were admitted users, were horrific. You know, they just...
Yeah, it is sad when someone
blew chunks more in the ring more than that guy. And I saw and photographed him as Dingo Warrior for Fritz in Dallas, and later his WWF career, and that horrible pay-per-view. I had to shoot that in WCW when he came in there against Hogan, etc. So No, let me throw this out too. I forgot when we're talking about her trainers, she went in and finessed with Dory Funk Jr. in the from 07 to 08. And was in there wrestling on his TV show, his Bang TV show, and all of that. So she had a big year in 2008, 2009 for Dory Jr. But the main thing was she was getting in there, and Dory was helping train her, even further. So look at all these people: Kowalski and Dory Jr. and Cornette and Heyman and the other guys at OVW. Les Thatcher, another one that had a hand and giving her pointers and spending quality time with her. That's pretty huge. Another character she had, which was very cool and funny, she played a stewardess character wrestling guys on the indie scene, and I forget which promotion. Let me scroll up and see. NWA Anarchy, where she was doing the Mile High Melissa, flight attendant gimmick. And just very cool. She was the youngest. Melissa was the youngest of 4 kids. She had a sister and 2 brothers. The BS in biology, which is a prerequisite for pre-medical, pre-dental, she got at Lakewood University. And she originally wanted to become a veterinarian helping animals. So animals, maybe Ev can speak to that. She was a huge animal person. My thoughts on her, because she was on a show with Chris Masters, another BTW show, and we were all showing pictures of our dogs, and Melissa was talking about her dogs and cats. So Ev, do you remember anything about her?
Yeah, she loved animals like we all do, and just a kind-hearted, warm person. Buddy, we need to go to our first guest.
I have been trying to reach
he's messaging me, so Vinny's available.
Then I am, unfortunately, I must not have his right Skype ID, because I'm trying Vinny the Guido.
Let me throw this out. Films.
I am not seeing him come up on Skype as an address. Maybe he has a different Skype address. And for those of you watching, I know you find this inner part of the show absolutely fascinating, but that's all.
Let Mike talk meanwhile.
Yeah. Pray Another Day was a film she did in 2003. Ultimate Deathmatch 2 in 2010. She played herself, which is a big deal. That tells you when you're a famous celebrity. And then A Story About Ian the following year.
Which I was in also.
Where are you? She did a female. What did you do? What did you guys do in that, or what did you do?
I played the father of a troubled young man, and we shot it in Washington Square Park, legendary Washington Square Park in Manhattan, in the Village. Yeah.
Besides Extreme Dodgeball in 2004, I recall seeing this episode because I'm a huge Action Bronson fan. He's the rap artist, chef, comic. Anyway, it wasn't his food cooking show. It was Action Bronson and Friends Watch Ancient Aliens. She was on with Sabu and Rob Van Dam playing her Super Genie character. And she got some speaking lines, which I don't think I ever heard her speak as Super Genie on wrestling shows like Impact.
Oh, sorry, we're trying to reach our next guest, so we still need a little bit of additional. The only thing that I'm really sad about too. I mean, I'm sad that she's gone, but I never had a chance to talk with her. I know we had thought about trying to get her on the show if she was still in the state of recovery with her leg. So I was hoping we could get her to chat on our show, before this happened, and obviously the guest.
I mean, I got a statement to read from Sabu. He was so thankful that everybody had and continued to donate to that GoFundMe, and I wanted to bring them both on, or at least her. But Evan and I had Sabu on. I brought him on the Legends many years ago, and he had no problem talking. Legends was one of the first places. I think I know it was the first place that Kamala James Harris ever spoke in public, ever, and Abby. Melissa, who could speak very well. She could cut, promos too. And Evan, at the very top, said that, she would have that rapid fire delivery when she spoke. Sometimes there was a nervousness, because she really would go over and over her lines in the back like the best workers do. They practice. I've seen Chris Daniels do what she did, get in front of a mirror, in the dressing room, wherever they can find a mirror, and cut the promo, look at themselves, try to have it perfected when they went out and cut that promo on the stick in the ring, or outside wherever they were filming them.
Oh, I love working with Christopher Daniels. That was some of the best shows that I ever did. When you knew Christopher Daniels was going to be on the show, you were like, okay, the show is going to be good. No matter what happens, no matter who shows up. Even some of the lightest crowds that we ever had with AVW over in Angels Camp and over in the center part of California, where only 50, 60 people showed up. Christopher Daniels still gave it his all every time he came out to the ring. I really do miss working with him, and I'm glad that he's gone on to have such a great career from those early APW days.
Another one that Melissa had 2 matches with for that other promotion, the non-APW promotion in BTW, was with Candice LeRae, who is in, of course, NXT. She had 1 match with Gail Kim, and then the following show, Gail Kim wrestled against, the artist who now is known as Bailey. After that really, most people never even heard of this, Pam in her wrestling career before she became Bailey, and really, Melissa carried her to a great match. Davina Rose went over. Again, it's Bailey. That was the name she used. But it was really, it's often the person, getting you over instead of going over. And it's more important to get over than go over. Melissa was such a huge part of that for Bailey. So that's really nice. And it's nice when the person who had that match acknowledged it, because a lot of that talent would not or just may not find the time, and Bailey took the time to do that. So that tells you what a quality person she is too. So, only 50. How many people Evan and I know, and Russ too, Bison Marksmith, who I knew from his training before he wrestled in front of people, and all his Japan work. It's very hard to do these. It's necessary. We're the only show I know of on the planet doing a tribute show for Melissa Coates, who definitely deserved it. But these deaths have got to stop. I don't know if it's the getting yourself worked up, the screaming, and then the pounding you take, because these guys, do it. It's a huge physicality element. There's not rest hold anymore. These guys are going full tilt now, as to why we're losing so many young people. I think it's really rough, that industry on the body, as opposed to stunt work, which she did, and some of the other things. I think it's just rough on the heart and all of this. And the travel, the not getting sleep, the constantly
I think traveling's a big part of it.
Because you need your sleep. That is an early cause of death, an early cause of Alzheimer's. They're talking about now, and I'm a retired dentist, and I know that. And you really need to try to get in a minimum of 7 hours. And a lot of the wrestlers we know just don't, or they don't have the time. They're catching red-eye 3 a.m. flights and stuff to make their connections. And it's from a selfish sense, I hate us losing our friends, these people that are so young. And so many of them have been the nice guys. And a lot of the a-holes continue to live to be 70 to 80 that really abuse themselves with drugs and all that stuff. And the people that don't and are nice and have tried to take care of themselves, are still in an industry that's physically rough. And TigerCon, that was a horrific loss. Same type of loss, the same way I felt. Such a nice person. And you don't meet that many, the Mick Foleys, the guys with a huge heart. You just don't meet that many. And thank God he's still with us, and hopefully will be for a zillion other years. But we've lost so many that were nice. Look at Walter Kowalski. Killer Kowalski was a vegetarian. Do you know How many people? I mean,
He lived to 81 though. That's different.
no, but still, I felt that was too young for a guy that did that. And what courage it took to admit he was a vegetarian in that kind of industry. And he was a killer heel. When he came into Los Angeles, oh boy, he was a Frankenstein monster, scared. And the talent in the back, guys like Raul Mata, they were legit scared of him, and they were workers. They knew
All
it was.
right, Mike, our guest is here.
All right.
All right, Vinny, Zainab Ali, Vinny the Guido.
Hey, what's going on?
Hello.
Hi. We're only seeing Vinny's head. We're not seeing both.
If you turn the camera, yeah, there we go.
Okay.
Terrific.
So here's what we're gonna do, Vinny. The next 5 minutes is yours. Then Zainab, the following 5 minutes is yours, because it's the end of the show already by the time we were able to reach you.
No, we're doing okay.
Oh,
We have
serious?
plenty of time.
Wow.
So, Vinny, tell us your relationship with Melissa.
Well, Melissa, she's like literally like a sister to me. Like, I've known her for years. I worked with her in the past a lot too. I first met her when I was working at VPW, Victory Pro Wrestling, and then years, we became really close ever since then. And then we actually got to work with each other in East Coast Pro Wrestling for Gino Caruso's East Coast Pro Wrestling, and we worked a match where I was going against Commissioner Tommy Coe in a steel cage match. And she was in his corner, and I had my fiance here, and Alex Vendetta was in my corner. And then Melissa turned on Tommy C, and she ended up joining my faction. And I was managing her ever since then. We worked a couple of shows together, and then after that, Gino wasn't bringing her in anymore. But yeah, and then I got to see her again in was it 2 years right before the pandemic. I was working with Modern Vintage Wrestling, which is ran by Gimmick Tree Entertainment. Charlie Hartman Armstrong is the promoter of that company. And we didn't get to work with each other then, but we got the carpool, and me, myself, my son at the time, and Sabu and her, we drove around checking out different weed dispensaries. So, so yeah, we drove around Philadelphia doing all that. And it was, but it's weird because I just spoke to her on the 17th, the day before her birthday, because her birthday's on the 18th. So she just literally turned 50 on the 18th, and I just spoke to her. And she seemed like she was getting better, and she was strong, and she said that she was getting better here and there, and it breaks my heart knowing that I just spoke to her and now she just passed away. And I'm like, wow, it's crazy, I mean, we already made plans. When I spoke to her on the 17th, we made plans. She said when she was going to come to New York next, we were all going to hang out and everything. And then this happens. And I mean, when I found out about it, and I found out that like within an hour an hour or two from when she passed away. And my fiance and I, we were in such shock. Like we just didn't even, we didn't type anything. We didn't put anything on social media because like we were so heartbroken. I mean, I didn't know what to say. Like I was just so heartbroken over it. And finally, it took me courage to, a couple days later, I just did a post at like 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. What was it, last night? And I did a post, and it took a lot for me to do that. And I just, a lot of people were like, weren't you closer to her? How come you didn't do anything yet? I'm like, hello, I'm in shock, you morons. Like, let me grieve. Like, it's, I just, it was just so heartbreaking, I mean, Evan, you've known her a long time too, right?
She was at my wedding.
Yeah, and you guys knew her too.
She stayed at my house. Yeah.
Yeah, she crashed at our house a few times too. So yeah. And I just, you know, and I know Sabu's taking it really rough. I mean, he's been dating her. He's been with her ever since 2014. And
do you know how they met?
How did they meet? How did they meet? Mike wanted to know.
You know, I don't know. I know it was through the wrestling industry, obviously, but
Ev said she had lived in Michigan. I thought, okay, that had to be the connection.
Well, I mean, last I knew, she lived in Atlanta. I mean, if she moved to Michigan, I think it was probably to be with Sabu. But I mean, I remember the last time she lived in Atlanta.
Yeah, at least 3 some odd plus years ago, they moved in together in Vegas.
Yeah, they did that. Oh yeah, that's right. She told me they moved out to Vegas, but before that, she was in Atlanta, and then she moved out to Vegas with Sabu. So, you know, it sucks because I mean, we were looking forward to seeing her when she came to New York next. You know, we were hoping to hang out with her and Sabu again because it's always a good time hanging out with Sabu and Melissa. So, you know, Sabu's a good dude, man. He really is, and I feel really, really bad for him. And you know, and also you know, her brother. I've been in contact with her brother, and you know, I mean, I told him how close I was with his sister and how I had history with her. You know, it's just I'm still in shock over it. Like, I can't believe she's gone. Like, it's just, you know, I mean, I was like, we were crying, we were upset over this whole thing, and then just finally I was able to, you know, write the piece that I wrote on social media. But
with a lot of great pictures also.
I mean, she was at your wedding, so yeah, you know. I mean, how did you guys meet? How did you guys meet Melissa?
I met her through Eric Adams, who was trained by Johnny Rods. They were very close. Eric was supposed to do the show tonight, but his mother's been seriously ailing. So anyway, yeah, we're all pretty much in shock from it, and we've devoted the entire hour to her. And
I'm sorry I came up so late. I mean, you guys started at 9:30, right?
Well, we when you give a Skype address, you have to do the dashes also. That's why we couldn't. You didn't give us the dashes.
Oh,
yeah. Anyway, no harm done. No harm done. Yeah. So Zainab Ali is a horror blogger, and tell us your relationship with Melissa.
Well, I met Melissa through Vinny, you know, in wrestling and everything, and we picked her up from the airport and everything. Vinny always said so many great things about her. So I felt like I had already known her before I actually met her.
You spoke on the phone with her a few times before you actually physically met her.
Yeah, and you know, once we then I got to meet her in person, and she was just amazing. I felt like I'd known her forever. I was really fortunate to have been friends with her, and you know, it was just very, she had a sense of humor on her, you know. I just remembered at the ECPW show where we all worked, she was, you know, of course, having another female there, of course, she being the stronger woman had to always pick on the other female. It was funny. It was really, really funny. And she just kind of threw that in there, and you know, it added to the entertainment. And
Melissa knew when she was with me, it was time to crack jokes. So, you know. Yeah.
But
did she do any ribs? Was she a rib artist, guys?
Yes.
Well, I mean, she used to get a kick out of me ribbing and fucking with people all the time. So, I mean, I'm a classic ribber. I fuck with everybody. It's just my thing, you know. You know, if you're gonna be in this business, I mean, you're gonna deal with ribs, you know. So. Owen Hart was one of the greatest ribbers ever, but you know.
But yeah, she was. But you know, we saw her a couple of times. I had not seen her. I spoke to her in 2019 when, you know, Vinny and Vincent were at the wrestling show in Philly, and I had spoken to her on the phone, and I was like, oh my God, if I had known, I would have gone. And that was the last time I spoke to her. And you know, Vinny spoke to her the other day. And we're not taking this well. It's just, you know, we were supposed to hang out with her when she came to New York.
Well, technically the show was in South Jersey, but it was on the Philly border.
Right.
So we were driving back and forth to Philly and Jersey like crazy. So
Yeah, so that was so yeah, we're taking it hard. It's a shame. It's very tragic. It really is.
I'm still like, it's weird because, and it's before I found out that she passed away. I had this presence in the kitchen. I felt like there was a spirit in the kitchen, and I felt the presence. I thought maybe it was her. I thought it was her father, and then I found out, like, about a few hours later was when I got the phone call that she passed away, and I'm like, holy shit! I think that was Melissa, not your dad. I was telling her, and it blew my mind. Like, I literally felt the presence in the kitchen. I was like, I thought it was her dad, and then when it dawned on me after we got the phone call, I'm like, holy shit! I think that was Melissa. It was really weird.
I'll tell you a quick story. Earlier in the show, we mentioned that today's the 15th anniversary of Tiger Khan's death, and after he passed, I was just distraught. He was one of my closest friends, and I had a dream that was so vivid that he came back, to talk to me, that to this day, and I'm not a superstitious guy. I mean, but I don't know if it was just exhaustion, depression, and a vivid dream, or if that was a ghost. But it sure felt like he had come back. I'll tell
weird,
you.
Right? Yeah.
So, yeah, we're all trying to handle this, and unfortunately, Dr. Mike and I, and now Buddy, the next generation, we end up doing one show after another with friends that we lose. It's a rough business. The wrestling business is not for longevity, and but a show like this is going to survive and mean something to her friends, family, fans, as opposed to the zillion podcasts covering a meaningless Raw. This show will have, meaning to people because she was a wonderful person. I mean, like a walking parade,
I mean, now, Evan, you're in New York. Where are you guys located?
Coast to coast.
Russ in San Francisco area.
Yeah, I had a feeling. I knew it was Cali. I just didn't know what part of Cali.
Because she came to her very first match in Cali was the very first match with Pam Bailey, who was working under her two grandmothers' names, Davina Rose. The very first match.
Oh,
so
wow.
I took a couple of photos, and I asked Bailey, wasn't that your first match at BTW in Northern California in Fremont, Newark? And she goes, yes. And then she posted this really lovely tribute to Melissa saying, she carried her and she helped her, and they had that real bond, particularly on Pam's end, Bailey's end, that, hey, this was my very first match. You never forget that when you're a worker.
And she was I swear, she was the sweetest woman. Like, she would literally give you the clothes off her back if it meant saving your life. She was one of the sweetest people in the wrestling industry. And, God always seems to take the good ones early. God always take the good ones early.
Yeah. There's not very many people that are truly nice and are not always out for themselves. Mick Foley is one of them. And he might be like one of the few guys left that we have. And then from my era, Steamboat and Bret Hart. We lost Bruno, who was like the most ethical, super nice guy ever. Johnny Valiant, John L. Sullivan, many.
Johnny Valiant was a good dude, man.
When Nikolai Volkov died, who was also a dear friend, Bret Hart said publicly Nikolai was the nicest person he ever met in the wrestling industry.
And he wasn't lying
out of thousands.
Well, I'll tell you, Bret wasn't lying either. Nikolai was like a brother to me too, and that's another one that broke my heart tremendously. I mean, Nikolai and I, we were really close, and we would always talk on the phone like every other week. We would talk on the phone, and we would always look forward to working together and stuff. And Nikolai's another one that hit home when he passed away. I was like, wow, no way.
Nikolai called me from the hospital. This is quite a story. He says, they cleared out my lungs. I had an infection. I'm feeling much better. I'm going home. His wife finds him dead at home.
Mhm.
I'm about to do a radio show. I'm like 5 minutes from doing a radio show. And I get the call that he died. And I'm like devastated. And by sheer coincidence on that show, there was a live blues band. It was, you know, like uncanny. And they had driven like 17 hours from down south to do the gig, to do my show. And I actually said on the show, I'm like, this is the blues. I mean, I just found out a dear friend died. You guys drove 17 hours to perform. I said, we're living the blues. And it was quite a show that day. And later we did a 1 hour tribute to Nikolai also. And yeah, man, Nikolai and Johnny passed 3 months from each other. That was a rough year.
That was weird. Yeah.
Zainab, I'd like to, while we still have a little bit of time, I do want to have a chance to mention your horror blog. I know it is a little out of place, but I want you to have a chance to
plug anything you want to plug.
Yeah.
Well, I since the pandemic, I've been taking I took time off from the blog, but I'm going to get back to it. But my address is www.nightmare.horrorblog.blogspot.com, where I write about different horror movies, and I plug in other people's projects as well. I plug in other people's projects as well because, of course, I support everybody, all the hardworking people in the horror industry. So, whether it be filmmakers, directors, writers, actors, anybody, people who came out with their new albums, I'm a strong supporter in that.
I'm a huge horror fan myself. If we had more time and a more appropriate forum, I would love to talk to you more about it. So hopefully we can have you and Vinny on again, on much better circumstances. It's obvious to see that you're still very emotional about this issue, as we all are. And
it's hard to deal with it. It really is. It's not easy losing people you love. It's just definitely, it's not easy, especially because, we were just talking to her not too long ago. And just the other day, Vinny was talking to her. And, I had, the last time I spoke to her on the phone was, in 2000, was when she was at the wrestling show. But Vinny was talking to her online, and, we were supposed to hang out with her when she visited New York, and she's, then we get the news, and it's very upsetting.
My last conversation with her was less than a week ago, and ironically, we're talking about her future. You should become a motivational speaker. You should write a book. You've had an interesting life. It's really tragic. I mean, 50's so young today. It's, it's very hard to.
It is very young. And, I was devastated months ago when I found out that she had to get her leg amputated. We were very beyond devastated.
She's an athlete, sure.
She, because she had blood clots in her leg, and if it meant saving her life, they had to amputate it. And it's very difficult for her to have to, go through that and start all over again, but this time in a different way.
Uh-oh, we have a little.
Hold on.
Sorry, we have a little bit of technical.
There we go.
But yeah, so that's what.
We're getting an echo, Vinny.
I think you have both the phone on and the computer on at the same time.
All right, there we go. Oh wait, there is an echo. Oh wait, hold on a minute.
Now you're freezing up. I think we're going to wrap up the show.
Yeah, we've done a really nice tribute for a friend that was close to all loved, and we're all going to miss Melissa terribly. It's a horrific tragedy. So Anybody that was friends with her, hopefully you'll put out good vibes. You'll write some nice things about her online, because that's what we all need right now.
Here's, I guess, the question, because you knew her better than me. Obviously, I never met her. How do you think she wants to be remembered?
Jeez.
She
wants to be remembered.
She wants to be remembered in a good light. That the fact that she's a good person, and that she was always so sweet and caring, and she wants people to remember her that way, the way she is, the who she was,
I know Melissa as being very driven. She was always driven, and she made it to the top of the bodybuilding industry. We showed one cover after another of magazines she was on earlier in the show, and she made it to a WWE pay-per-view. How many thousands of wrestlers never had that opportunity? And no matter what the obstacle was, she was always, climbing and fighting and trying, giving 110%. And a great friend, and, a loving daughter and sister and everything else. I mean, just a good person who, made it to the top. What else can I say? Mike, anything you want to add?
I just think she would want to be remembered, period. And we
all do.
Never be forgotten. I mean, anybody that's got a filmography, an IMDb page, all of those things, and so much history online, and a show that we did with love. I think we're, again, the only show on the planet doing a tribute show now, an hour and 10 minutes, to our friend Melissa Coates.
Well,
I'm gonna miss her dearly, and I like, to me, I feel like she's still alive. Like, it's the weirdest thing. Like, I just spoke to her the other day. Like, I still can't get over it myself. Like, I'm devastated over this. It's like, I mean, dude, I was crying for like a day and a half. Like, I didn't. It's like, why her? I don't understand. Like, there's so many shitty people in the world that God could have taken, and he takes her at 50, which God always takes the good ones young. I don't understand it. Sometimes I wonder why I'm still on this earth. It's insane.
Well, I think we all wonder that every once in a while. It makes us.
One theory is it's all random. It's all random.
Maybe they don't want the assholes up north. Prevent them from coming for the longest time, and the good ones they take early. John Lennon and everybody else.
It just boggles my mind, It boggles my mind.
Yeah, if you're like a Nazi officer, you're gonna live to 87. There's no justice.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Yeah, every one of those guys they try, they're in their 90s. Let's go. Jesus.
That's right.
Somebody off them in prison or something.
Yeah,
do the world a favor.
Man.
Well, I don't know how to end this on a positive note, given the situation that is entailed and the sadness that we all feel. And I'm hoping we can do a show next week where we can, not have to give a tribute to somebody who died before their time.
I would guesstimate the last 4, 5, 6 shows we announced somebody who passed.
New Jack.
Yeah, Vinny, did you know Aaron Fenzi? You must have known him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this guy was in his 40s. He was the picture of health.
It's crazy. It's crazy, man. It really is.
It really makes you think about your own, mortality and what you're doing on this earth. And I guess, we'll keep trying to make the most of it, especially after everything that happened with COVID. She was able to survive through the whole COVID thing. And
raise a glass in her tribute. When I knew her, 06, 07, she was into protein shakes. So maybe lift a protein shake.
Yeah, lift a protein shake to Melissa.
I think that's a great way to end everything and give a toast to her. And thank you once again for being on our show and making it a very special show.
Thank you guys,
Thank
man.
you.
Eventually, we'll come on under other circumstances.
We'll have you under happier circumstances. And let me just say quickly, Robin Coleman and Eric Adams were scheduled tonight, But they both have very ailing parents, and
Yeah,
hopefully
we literally just got home in time for this interview. Like, we
okay.
were at a Rough Riders event in Long Island. We were at a Rough Riders event earlier. I literally just got home like minutes before this call.
Okay, well, we
So we're glad you
appreciate
could
your
make
effort.
it, and you made it a special call for us.
Oh
Thank
yeah,
you so
I
much.
raced my ass here. I wanted to make sure I was here in time, you know.
There you
Well,
go.
thank you for being on the show, and
didn't
we'll
wanna
again
while I was
have you
driving.
on in better circumstances for sure. All right,
definitely.
everyone, that's the show for this week.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Guys, I appreciate it.
Melissa.
Thank you so much. This
Guys.
means a lot that we're on here, and I appreciate you guys having us on for this special segment. It means the world to us, guys. It really does, and thank you so much.
Thank you for
And,
being here.
Obrigado gozaimashite combate kurasai, Melissa.
Good night, and
Love you
see
guys, man.
everyone
Thank
next
you so
week.
much.
Okay.
You guys.
God bless, guys. Ciao. Good night. Bye.